now, we're the light, we're as free as the light, like the rays of the sun, running to every corner. We are up and the world has got to follow. We are not afraid, 'cause we'll never ever know defeat. But they all belong to the age to come. We have forgiveness, pure and holy, by the precious blood of the Lamb. We are the generation who live ahead of, we live in this world, but by the powers of the age to come. We are the generation who live ahead of, we live in this world, but by the powers of the age to come. There's a light that I see in spite of the darkness that surrounds me, and the light that I see only comes alive every time I hear your voice. There's a joy that I have in spite of the sorrow that surrounds me, and the joy that I have only comes alive every time I hear your voice. There's a peace deep down in my soul, in spite of the crisis that surrounds me, and the peace in my soul only comes alive every time I hear your voice. Shoot it, There's a hope I have in me, in spite of the destruction that surrounds me, and the hope deep within only comes alive every time I hear your voice. There's a call that I hear, in spite of the distractions that surround me, and the call that I hear only comes alive every time I hear your voice. There's a rest that I've seen, in spite of the terror that surrounds me, and the rest that I see only comes alive every time I hear your voice. Shooby dooby 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 shoo, shooby shooby doo, shooby doo, shooby shooby doo, shooby dooby, shooby shooby doo, shooby doo, shooby shooby. Hey, I can't deny, so I declare that nothing can satisfy me. I can't pretend not to be aware that you are the bread of life, that you are the bread of life, that you are the bread of life. There's no light, there's no joy, there's no peace, there's no hope. There's a joy down in my soul, and it's a joy I can't control. There's a call, there's a way, there's a way that I see every time I hear your voice. Hey, hey, hey. I can see fear in your eyes. I can hear confusion in the words you speak. Let me tell you now, If it's true love that you're looking for, I know a place where the rivers never cease to flow. Let me take you to the place I know. Let me take you to the one I love. Would you put your hands in mine? Put your hands in mine. No one knows the way that leads unto eternal life. No one's seen his face but the Son who came from heaven above. If you let him lead, you'll know the peace that he can give. Someone's gotta lead you there, as do many of the good things in life. So let me take you to the place I know. So let me bring you to the one I love. Would you put your hands in mine? Would you put your hands in mine? Yeah. Would you put your hands in mine? Would you put your hands in mine? Oh Lord, put your hands in mine. Would you put your hands in mine? I know the light that the world so dearly needs to see. I've seen the hope that the prophets prophesied about. That's why I tell you now, if it's this love that you're looking for, then I know the place where the rivers never cease to flow. So let me take you to the place I know, and let me bring you to the one I love. Would you put your hands in mine? Would you put your hands in mine? Oh Lord, would you put your hands in mine? Would you put your hands in mine? Oh yes. Would you put your hands in mine? Let me take you to the place I know. Let me bring you to the one I love. To the place where the waters never cease to flow. To the place of love. I know the way he walks. I've seen the path he trods, as the Spirit is all over me, guiding me safely in the way.
Hello and welcome to a special broadcast. This is a special service. We are going to be looking at things from the perspective of God's kingdom, and I'm here with somebody who's not just a minister of the gospel, but he also is a financial expert. He works in the financial fields. Henry Ogwaku. How do I introduce you now?
Welcome viewers. God bless you.
Not in your capacity as Pastor Henry now, but as a money maker, socio-economic, financial analyst and expert, if I'm right.
Yes, sir.
Good. So now let's get going, because we are going to be looking at the financial and socio-economic impact of this pandemic. I've said something that this pandemic is a war. And we said that the origin of this, it has helped many people to realize that we need to look beyond Wife, children, school, house, money, savings, buy private jets and things and all that and all that and all that. We say that definitely this pandemic has forced everybody to realize that we're involved in something bigger than the mundanity of life. What's your take on that? What's your...
That is absolutely correct. At this time, I'm not sure people are still thinking about their savings. They are thinking about how to live. So it's gone beyond the things that you have. It's not a matter of how do I even survive these dangerous times that we are living in. So it's gone beyond, all the material things of this world. It's not a matter of life and death.
Good. So now again, what I want us to bring from the Bible is this, is that whenever there's a war, because this is a war situation, all the nations of the world. Bible says there was war in heaven. Wherever there's war only starts when there's a clash of values. So do you see in any way this pandemic bringing to the forefront a clash of values? I'm talking in terms of finances and socio-economics now. Do you think there's going to be a clash of values accompanying this pandemic?
Yes, I should think so. Because clearly, even the nations of the world that used to determine the trend of economic activities,
yes,
as we speak, most of them are shut down. Not much is happening. Supply chains have been broken. A lot of nations are not producing. Ordinarily, one would think that what we are told or what we are taught is that the strength of your economy is a function of productivity. So it is surprising that even these nations that even are not producing at this time, they are still maintaining strong currencies. So obviously something is wrong somewhere, and I think there is need for us to do a reassessment of the current situation.
Beautiful. So would I then be correct in saying that this pandemic has also brought with it a disruption? Now, between the pandemic and the disruption, I wonder which one is going to last the longest. Between the pandemic and the disruption. Because the disruption, we're saying, aviation has been affected.
Yeah.
Immigration policies affected. Businesses worldwide affected. Healthcare policies affected. Education has been affected. It's brought a disruption in practically everything to do with modern life. So let's look at the socio-economic disruption now. Is it global as well, or are we maintaining the status quo?
One of the things that has become very clear is that, no doubt, even the IMF, the global institutions presently, are saying that even after all of this, at the end of this pandemic, that is going to take the global economy another 1 year or more, to come back to the pre-COVID position. Okay. So clearly, the disruption is going to last much longer than the pandemic. Okay. So even if at the end of 3 months, 4 months down the line, we are through with the pandemic, the world will now face the real issues, which will be how do we get people employed? How do we feed the people? So the issues, are yet to be dealt with.
Okay. Now let's come to brass tacks. I'm coming from the kingdom of God, and I can tell you that money is going to collapse globally in the days ahead. In our country right now, a lot of people are talking about cutting jobs, cutting costs and all that. But I'm saying that Nigeria should be preparing, because in the days ahead, when the collapse of money globally happens, it's going to affect Nigeria here too. Our money is going to collapse completely in the days ahead, and the disruption from that alone. I mean, in the circles of financial analysts, do they see that this disruption may lead to a total collapse and a failure of money? Or are they holding up to the hope that, things will continue to...
Well, I think the view of most financial analysts is that obviously, there's going to be a disruption, and that that disruption is going to last for a while. Now, what they've not been able to put their finger on is how long all of this is going to take before it begins to moderate. So, but clearly, over the next 1 or 2 years, the effect of this will still be felt. Now, as it affects the currency, which is a major global issue, I personally think that there's going to be a major disruption in terms of the currencies across the world. But then again, one of the issues that needs to be put on the table is as it affects some of the people who have programmed events, all these currency-related events and economic issues, because there's a programming that is in place.
No, but I think there's something I'm saying that you're not yet saying. I'm saying money is going to fail completely. I'm not talking about balancing and adjusting and a recovery. I'm saying that across the entire globe, the socio-economic programs, the dynamics that operate today, that they're going to keep trying to prop it up, but it is going to fail completely when this epidemic runs its course and the disruption after it gets to a particular point. Do you see that there's a possibility of money collapsing completely?
Well, I see a possibility of a collapse. But what I do not see is whether it's going to collapse completely, because there are two different things. But there's going to be a collapse. There's going to be a major challenge that the world will have to contend with for some time. So, because if we take it to the extreme of saying completely, then that would be pretty disastrous. So I don't see it up to that end, but I see a collapse in the horizon.
Now, my own question and follow-up is that, first of all, should Africa really be worried if there's a global collapse of finances? Because if you ask me, I'm not an economist, but if you remember, Spirit-filled people were able to talk about many things. Apostle Paul told them not to set sail in a ship the other day when they were going to Melita. He said this boat cruise is going to be terrible, there's going to be loss, but the captain, the centurion, and all the soldiers decided to obey the shipmaster, saying that what does a pastor know? Now, as a spirit-filled person, I'm deliberately straying into a field that is specialized with the Holy Spirit, saying there's going to be a complete failure of money across the entire world as the pandemic takes a turn that will surprise the world. And at that time, is there anything in Africa? First of all, Africa. I'm sure you remember Francois Carnet, Adam Smith, the issue of the GDP and all that. Now, all those things, as far as I'm concerned, are devices. And those devices were never concocted to help Africa. Can you speak on that? Because what do we stand to lose in Africa if the global economy collapses?
Okay, let me say that, in Africa, if we get our acts right, actually, I do not think, that we should be crying at this time if we get our acts right. I do not think that, okay, for instance, let me give you simple examples. Look at the basic things of life. Africa on her own can survive. If Africa can sit up and do what is needful. We can feed ourselves, for example. We can provide shelter for ourselves. Talk about the basic things of this life. We can provide them.
So in short, we are victims right now of a higher intelligence based on socio-economic formulas that were created by foreign nations to favor, or at least not to favor, Africa.
Definitely.
What is the volume of trade that the whole of Africa is doing every year as a percentage?
Well, I don't know the exact figures, but I do know that it's not up to 2% or somewhere around there.
I'm told it's about 3.5%. Now, if 54 nations of Africa, 10 dependent territories, we are doing less than 4% of global trade, why should we be worried about a collapse of money globally? I would think it's an opportunity for us to escape the trap of poverty, artificial poverty, that has been created by GATT, created by this Britain. After the World War, some countries got together to discuss how to impoverish some parts of the world and then to enrich themselves. Of course, they didn't write it like that, but the Bretton, what year was that?
The Bretton Woods conference.
Yes.
The idea was to determine the value of currencies, across nations. I mean, the basis, the metrics to measure what the value of any currency would be.
So was Africa represented at Bretton Woods?
We were not only represented, we were not even in a position to
represent.
To be represented.
So if I really ask anybody now, because I've asked many professionals, why is $1 equal to how much again?
450 naira.
Why is $1 equal to 450 naira? I put it to you that it's a spiritual thing. It's a war of values. And I'm saying that the disruption that is following this thing is an opportunity for Africa to escape its poverty. 1 minute before we go, give me your take. I say I can see a collapse of money globally. What can Nigeria or African nations do that will minimize its effect upon our societies and make us even stronger?
Okay, I believe that, like we said earlier, we have an opportunity to turn, the trend of events to favor Africa at this time. I think that as Africa should begin to worry about what maybe you can call a regional currency. Africa should begin to think about how some nations in Africa, it doesn't have to be all the nations, it could be just a few nations to come together and agree on a currency that will be binding on the rest of Africa. So if we're able to come up with that, we'll be able to present even a stronger, common front against the global oppressors, if you want to use that word.
Okay, we'll be back, but I can tell you something that I know full well, is that if Nigeria, like you said, whether with some other countries or ourselves alone, we create a new currency totally devoid of dollar denomination, totally devoid of any global exchange values, we will find a currency that will see us through the disruption. And we can always quote the doctrine of necessity to introduce such using blockchain and cryptocurrencies. We can use the modern platforms to introduce these things quickly. And it definitely will see us through this time, and we will come out stronger when the dust settles.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll be back some other time again.
Thank you very
to
much.
look at the financial implications. So money is going to collapse in the days in front. We'll talk about it, how it's going to affect families.
Yes, sir.
But how Nigeria can do it such a way that it will not affect families at all. We will even do well. Let's talk about the value chain, the value providers, the value destroyers, and all that. Okay, wealth creators, wealth generators.
Thank you.
Where's mommy?